Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen. And oh, wait.
You can use the scroll button to zoom in.
Okay, so are we starting with Yugao?
Yeah, we're starting with you, Val.
Okay.
It's Darlene's favorite, so.
Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Yugao is showing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Sarah,
Yeah.
take it.
Okay, so this is a print by Yoshitoshi. He is one of the maybe 3 woodblock print artists who's considered the last gasp of ukiyo-e, of woodblock prints in traditional woodblock prints in Japan. And so his career spanned, his career spanned the Edo period into the Meiji period. And his style of print is very modern, but it's also quite traditional in the sense that his subjects were traditional kabuki plays, traditional books, traditional beautiful women pictures. And this is an image from his most famous series, The 100 Aspects of the Moon. And actually, it's not actually 100. Professor Brown, how many exactly is it? I forgot. It's something like 30.
Yeah, it was supposed to be 100, but they got to 30, I think.
Yeah. And each one features the moon in some way. So this is actually this was toward the end of Yoshitoshi's career, and he was really prior to his I guess his mature stage, he was known for really violent, bloody, gory, almost like demented prints. Some people actually hypothesize that he was mentally disturbed during those years. You saw one of those prints Brittany showed us with the severed heads. That was from his more violent stage. But this is known as kind of his last really, his most important series, and his sort of the culmination of his craft, and also a kind of coming to terms with himself and the world after all this period of really nasty, violent stuff. And so, oh yeah, that one, that's it. That's the Lady Kaio and the Severed Heads. Those are just a couple from 1,000. Oops. But we'll get back to that later. So Yugao.
I've lost
okay.
Yugao.
Let's see.
I've lost Yugao. I'll have to look for it.
No worries. If you
okay, keep talking and I'll.
Oh sure, I can share it.
Okay, if you have
want me to.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Where is the share screen? There it is. Okay. Can you see?
Not yet. Okay.
Okay. So Yugao is the nickname of Genji's, in the Tale of Genji. She's Prince Genji's first really important girlfriend. She's in maybe I think it's the 2nd or 3rd chapter of Tale of Genji. And she is...
Sarah, excuse me, we lost the image.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There, okay, it's back.
Is it there? Okay.
Yeah.
So she's tragic in many ways, but her name is actually a nickname. We never find out her real name because she's always incognito, and Genji's always incognito too. So they never know each other's names. And Yugao is the name of this flower that's it's a white gourd flower, and the name in English is a moonflower, or it's also called a tropical white morning glory. And these flowers are known for their fragility and for fading really easily. But they're really beautiful at the moment when they bloom, but it's for a short period of time. So this is an analogy for the way that Yu Gao, her disastrous affair with Genji carries out. And she, let me see, can you still see my screen? I have to have a look at my notes. So Genji finds her in this villa, and the wall of the villa is covered with these flowers. And so this is a quote from the Tale of Genji. A bright green vine, its white flowers smiling to themselves, was clambering merrily over what looked like a board fence. A word I would have with you, oh, you from afar, Genji murmured at which a man of his went down on one knee and declared, my lord, they call that white flower Twilight Beauty. The name makes it sound like a lord or lady, but here it is blooming on this pitiful fence. So it turned out Yu Gao was a lady of higher rank than was suggested by the house she was hiding in. But she always kept it secret, and because she was married and she was having an affair with Genji. Well, she was married, no, actually she was a concubine to Genji's best friend, but Genji never figured it out while she was alive. So that gives away the tragic ending. Genji, well, she writes Genji a poem when she sees him looking at the flowers outside her fence. She writes a poem on a fan, a heavily perfumed fan, and has one of her servants take it out to Genji. And Genji is enraptured by this poem. So the poem she wrote was, yes, I see that you may indeed be he. The light silver dew brings to clothe in loveliness a Yu Gao flower. So Yu Gao means evening face, and that was mentioned previously. So Genji writes in reply, let me then draw near and see whether you are she, whom glimmering dusk gave me faintly to discern in Yu Gao flowers. So Genji, by way of poetry, seduces this girl, and she's 19, Genji's about 17. Oh, they started early in the Heian period. And he seduces her and carries her off to a villa that he owns off in the suburbs of Kyoto. And as they're going into this villa, Genji remembers that this place has a reputation for being haunted, but he just says, oh, the demons won't bother me. But in the night, Yu Gao is possessed by an evil spirit that inhabits the villa, and she dies right there. So Genji has only known her in person for a few hours, actually, and she dies. So in the story, her name, Yu Gao, is a direct reference to the way that she blossoms and then fades quickly and has this ephemeral kind of radiance. She's supposed to be incredibly beautiful. So when you see Yoshitoshi's image, Yu Gao is presented as a ghost. So we can assume that she's haunting the garden of the villa where she died. And if you notice, the stems of the flowers are wrapping around her, and you can see that she's translucent. You can see the vines through her robe. And another, well, that's enough to tell you that she's a ghost, but another way you can tell is that she has this kind of long, unkempt hair. This is supposed to look kind of wild. If you're a Heian lady, your hair was supposed to be perfectly smooth and straight. She's also fading off into nothing. Her robe just vanishes. And in Japanese folklore, ghosts do not have legs. They just sort of hover. And she's also wearing a light sort of funereal kimono. So this is Yoshitoshi's way of sort of drawing the flower and the meaning of the flower together with an image of Yugao as this ghostly, sad, tragic figure. So this is Darlene's favorite print, and I'm going to turn it over to her
Darlene,
to
tell us.
explain the artistic aspects, because Darlene is an artist and she sees a lot more things than I do in these prints.
I will, the way it is. I have to show you something. This is a book. Can we, this is, do you see her on the cover?
Oh,
No,
yep.
can't see.
I can see.
Yugao is on the cover of this. This is John Stevenson's book on the 100, Yoshitoshi's 100 Aspects of the Moon. And he has placed Yugao, the print, on the cover. I did not know that when I got the print. Matter of fact, this was, once I got the book, it was like, wow, look at this. The image is on the book. And it told me something that this lady and the mystery that she has affected a lot of people as through the centuries. I have to tell you something about this. I'm going to talk about this briefly in terms of the art part of it. And I'm going to first start with color. The print, as you see later with Yoshitoshi's works, he goes full blast color, and he's very knowledgeable about anatomy, physiology. He could draw anything. It's solid. But on this image, what he's done is he's become a poet. And as poets do, they say very little, but they actually talk, and the meaning is intense. So, you know, a poet says many times in a few sentences what it might take someone else a couple of chapters to do. So we see Yugao here as represented not as the solid form that Yoshitoshi usually associates, especially some of his most violent things, but here as almost subdued and as pared down and as simple, but it's not really simple. The moon is an important part of all of the images from this series. And here it is, it's emerging. The color on the print is a soft gray, but it's not a cold gray, it's a warm gray. And that's important because I walked around last night in my garden around twilight in Phoenix about 5:30 or so, and I tried to visualize what it must have been like for the creation of this print. And I said, you know, this is where the sun has gone down, the color has gone down, but yet there's this soft haze over everything. And I thought about this, the garment that she's wearing, and I said, imagine if you can, a silk scarf. And there's a breeze going through a heavily wooded or heavily planted garden, and the breeze lifts the silk scarf. And if you watch a scarf move around on this, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. It moves wherever the wind will take it. And if you search for it, you'll never find it, but it'll settle maybe in the corner of the garden sometime later. And so you can visualize perhaps that she's a little bit like a silk scarf that's floating around in a garden at twilight during the soft colors of gray. And then if you see her hair, Sarah made a comment about the hair, and I think that's important, but I also think that women at this time had very dark, very thick hair, and yet what Yoshitoshi has shown us with her hair is wispy. And you get the feeling that if a wind were to come in and a breeze were to come in, her hair would lift and would move along with the garment. And it just all in keeping with the same idea. Most of the plants that are represented here are the only things that appear real, the leaves and the tendrils. And on the print that I have, there's a gourd to the right-hand edge of it. And it's the only really solid image in the whole print. Everything is kind of ethereal. Asagawa, asa meaning in Japanese means morning. And the word for morning glory in Japanese is asagawa. This is yugawa, and meaning yugata in Japanese means evening or twilight. So you have yugata meaning twilight flower or twilight morning glory versus asagawa, morning glory. So yugawa represents where she, as Sarah has said, represents the position where she's in right now. And she floats through this thing. And the only solid things, if you see them again, is the plants. I'm trying to think about this and thinking if I were to be the prince, and maybe he would be visiting again in the garden, trying to maybe search for her. And he would look for a garden, he would look in the garden for her, and maybe she would appear again, and maybe she wouldn't. But I think that's the mystery of this whole thing. The artist was able to understand anatomy and physiology, as I mentioned, but the only solid thing that he's shown us is the sleeve and the folds of the sleeve that will show you that he understood that the folds would follow on her elbow, but the rest of her is not shown, or she's a shallow, or she's transparent, and she would be, again, the only thing you really see about her is maybe part of her face, but the rest of it is she's just, she's going to be following us around, or we'll be following her. And I think the prince probably would have liked to have met her again, and perhaps we will see him trying to find her again in the garden, in the moonlight. Now, if anyone else is interested in making a comment, or if you have questions, I think it would be great. So this is all I have to say about this print, but it's truly one of the favorite, my favorite print of all of the ones I own.
That was awesome, Darlene. Thank you.
The date of the print is about 1888. Am I right? I think,
Yes. I
I
forgot
don't
to
know.
look up the exact date.
yeah.
Let me see.
It's got a date over here on the
Oh,
side.
it does. Oh, yeah.
Well, 87, I think. 1887.
Well, it's a Meiji year, and I don't know which. 1887 is probably it.
Meiji 19, it looks to me.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments about the print? If not, shall we go to one of the earlier prints by Yoshitoshi?
Sure.
Sure.
Let's see if
Shall I share
do-
my screen?
Yeah, if you can, why don't you?
Let me
do
see if I
that?
can.
Let
Okay,
me
and I'll
stop
go.
sharing.
Okay, I'll do this. Okay, now can you see the print of a?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, she's there.
so this is
Okay,
one of.
so
This is 1865. So 3 years before the end of the Meiji, beginning of the Meiji period. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. So this, as you can see, is from Kuniyoshi's violent period. Sorry, not Kuniyoshi, from Yoshitoshi's violent period. Lots of blood. We have decapitated heads. And at the center, we have the Lady Kaio, who is actually a fox demon in the guise of a beautiful woman. And this story was originally an illustrated scroll. Well, it was the first images we have of it are from an illustrated scroll in the medieval period. And then it became a really popular story in Otogi Zoshi illustrated books, illustrated stories. And that was in maybe the Momoyama period when it first, or maybe the Muromachi when it first started appearing. And it went on to become very popular in kabuki and many different variations on this theme. And it was really popular because you have this femme fatale and you also have this supernatural element and the gore and this exotic flavor that you can tell in the dress of Lady Kaio. She's not dressed as a Japanese woman. She's supposed to appear Indian. And in this story, the fox demon, Lady Kyle, first appeared in China. She was a nine-tailed fox. In Japan, foxes are considered trickster spirits, and they have all kinds of powers, and they're usually bad. So she got involved with the King Zhou of the Shang Dynasty and caused the downfall of the Shang Dynasty. And then she went to India and became a concubine of the prince Banzoku or Hanzoku. And she caused him to be a really like brutal king. And this image is an illustration of the time when she convinced King Banzoku to behead 1,000 men for her enjoyment, her amusement. So you can see her just sort of gesturing coolly and not being fazed at all by this bloody death that's all around her. And you can also see there's palm trees in the back that sort of give a sense that this is not Japan. This is a foreign place. And so this is based on a story, and actually a story from India where a prince or a king is a very evil ruler and he's possessed by a spirit. But the Japanese took it and put their own spin on it and made it a fox demon that was actually, and a woman, of course, who was behind all the terrible bloody deeds. So I will turn this one over to Darlene. I should just mention that the story in the upper left-hand corner is the story, and Yoshitoshi collaborated with a writer who wrote the story, and this was something that he did often. He would collaborate with people for newspapers to make images for newspapers and various journalism prints, but this is kind of a departure.
Okay. This is one that you sometimes associate with.
Yeah. Over here.
I'm sorry, I can't hear it.
Oh, let's see.
Someone made a comment and I can't hear.
Oh, oops. Okay, Darlene, I muted everybody and now I'm asking you to unmute. So do you see a pop-up that's,
Did
there you
that
go.
mute?
Okay, carry on. Someone just
No.
forgot to mute themselves.
All right, when I saw an image of this print, this is one that you sometimes associate with Yoshitoshi. It shows all of his drawing, it shows the drama, and it shows his ability to get this very emotional, very dramatic image in front of us. I took a look at this and I said, wow, first of all, you notice the spear right above her head. It's using a diagonal, and in art, if you use a diagonal, it's a pointer. So where does the diagonal go? Right to this one speared head. And he places the head not in the center, but at the very edge of the print. And it makes you suddenly realize that, oh my gosh, here is this strange image, and he's forced it visually to the edge of the paper so you can't miss it. There's another head that's hidden in the fabric, but I'm very aware of the image to the left-hand side of the print. He has also pierced the tree with her spear, and it shows you the kind of drama and also the violence that's there. You imagine piercing a tree with a spear. And so then I noticed that on the print that I have, and it maybe the color doesn't show, but there's a lot of red, and it's sanguine and it's blood. And she's almost like she's symbolically surrounded. Whoops.
If you use your mouse button to, or there's back and forward buttons on the
Where-
bottom of your
Do
screen.
I want to push something?
Oh, no, that's Professor Brown. There you go. There you go.
Anyway, the red, she's surrounded by blood and it shows in her scarf. And artistically, that scarf wraps around her neck, goes around her body, goes around the other severed head, and then flows down through the garment. And it's a bright red color of the print that I have. And it's a blood color. And some of it is dribbling down, and it could be visually at her feet and also to the edge there. So there's, you know, the whole idea of it being violent is very evident. He's also surrounded the figure with dark. So you have a silhouette of the red and the sanguine plus the darkness at the back, and it makes a very strong visual image, and it's very hard to ignore what's going on here. So the design is masterful in that it uses a lot of the things that we talk about, the diagonal, the contrast, and so on. Also, look at her arm. She forms the triangle, again, pointing with her finger to the one severed head. So you got this triangle shape. So as artists, if you use a diagonal and if you use a pointing kind of thing, I mean, design-wise, he's really got an idea of what he wants to emphasize and what we are supposed to look at. So in the, if you look again at all of the fabric, he understands the designing and drawing of fabric, because I used to teach drawing, and we spent a session with fabric and life drawing classes, because you drape the figure, and to understand all the folds and the fabric that goes around. The students, learn a lot by doing this. So whenever I see fabric in artwork, I have to look at it and see what the artist is doing. And so what we have here is that this fabric serves several functions. It's decorative, yes, but also its color shows us that there's a whole lot more going on here rather than what you think. So we have other colors here. We have a turquoise color, we have red, we have black, we have the position of the figure. She's upright, but again, the design that shows us directly to this one very strong diagonal of the spear and also of her arm, and we cannot escape the visual imagery of the head and the severed head at the very edge of this design print. So again, as a designer, he was using everything he understood to get an image across, and I think that the terror of this and the drama of this is very evident in this print. Any questions, comments?
I have a question. Actually, this is fascinating. My name is Young Oh. I'm at ASU. It's fascinating. I was just wondering what kind of tree this is. Is this?
I'm gonna guess it's a palm, but I don't know what kind of palm. It's not the fan palms that we have in Phoenix at all, but there are a lot of different varieties of trees, and this is what I'm gonna guess, but anyone else has an idea, I'd love to hear it.
Does it indicate any kind of where location of this scene with the
I
tree?
don't know, Sarah, maybe you
It's
could.
a good question. I think at the very least, it tells you that this is not Japan, because there are some palm trees in Japan, but this is not the kind
Like
that you
this.
see there. This is kind of a kind of more maybe warm environment, tropical looking plant.
Yeah.
And on the right, this thing that I used to think was a pumpkin, I think it's actually the leaf of the palm tree getting ready to pop
Oh,
open. Don't you
okay.
think, Darlene? I thought it was pumpkin at
It
first.
could be, or it could be some fruit of the
Yeah,
tree.
it could be that
Coconut.
too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Like,
So,
can you see right here that she or someone has pierced that hole, the heart of the tree with a spear?
Right.
I
Also
also,
I'm sorry. I'm also quite shocked. I mean, it's interesting. I find it interesting. Her face, the facial expression.
Right.
In other faces, there's agony, definitely, but her face is almost like aloof or kind of defiant.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And another thing that I didn't mention, that's a great point, is that her face is clearly supposed to be that of a foreigner. She's got
Yeah.
curly hair, a nose that's quite prominent, just the profile of things that we see in prints that show foreigners sometimes in kind of a bad light. So, but this is definitely, she's supposed to be beautiful. She's supposed to be mysterious. She's supposed to be awful. Another thing is that you can see the curly hair on these heads too.
Curly hair,
That
right.
tells you that those are foreigners.
Mhm.
This,
She's got
I
curly
think,
hair.
I think this series is interesting. Here's the series title. It's 100 Ghosts, but it's not just Japan. It's supposed to be China, Japan, but maybe that's a way of saying, these are international.
Yeah, it's
And certainly-
Wakan Monogatari, which means, I think it just means 100 Tales of Japan and China. I don't know if it's traditionally called Japanese. I mean,
Well,
sorry, 100 Ghosts.
sorry. Hyakumonogatari had a specific meaning during the Edo period.
Oh, okay.
A practice whereby you would get together in a group and tell 100 stories.
Oh, with the candles.
Yeah, exactly. The idea
Okay.
was that ghosts would appear at the end of the phenomenon. And now it could of course just mean 100 stories. It could potentially also have that resonance, right?
Thank you, Professor Tuck.
Mm.
Professor Tuck is an expert on Japanese literature of this period.
Sort of.
Shall we go on to the other print in the series?
Yes.
Um,
No, let's go on to the triptych that shows the light coming out of the woman.
Okay.
So if you hit next on that.
Now, are
The
you
next-
seeing the
That
triptych
one.
now?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so this one is by Kunisada. It's the transformation of Tamamo no Mae. Now, Tamamo no Mae is the Japanese name of Lady Kaio. So the previous fox demon incarnation from India, once she had finished her mischief in India, she traveled back, she went to China, and then she went to Japan and became beloved of the Emperor Toba. So the emperor became sick, and eventually they figured out that she was the one that was causing this, that she was not actually all she appeared to be. Well, she was actually more. And an astrologer called Abe no Yasunari figured out somehow that she was actually the incarnation of a fox demon. And so he exorcised her. He did something. Well, now this is a story that was in, as I mentioned, very popular in Kabuki. And this is a scene likely from a Kabuki play of the time. And so in Kabuki, they love to do the same stories over and over and make interesting little changes or big changes to the story. And it would just progress and evolve. So I think what we're seeing here is it originally started that it started with the idea that Tamamo no Mae glows in the dark. She, her body exudes this glow. But I think what we're seeing here is the instant of her exorcism, because it looks much more violent than just, because she always glowed in the dark. This was something that always happened. So I think this is kind of an evolution of a theme in Kabuki to make this one, to turn this idea of her glowing in the dark to a much more like a shorter scene, but it is much more dramatic. And you can imagine in Kabuki, they would have used spotlights to make this really dramatic scene. And So Tamama no Mae, the fox demon, she wasn't, when she was exorcised, she didn't go away. She went into a stone called Sessho Seki, which means the death stone. And it's a stone that actually exists in real life. I can't remember where it is, but it exudes this kind of mist and maybe a sulfurous smell. And anybody who approached it was said to have their life in danger, or maybe everybody who approached it died. But so this was a story that was very popular, as I said, in popular literature. And it was especially popular, I've read, with, or maybe because it had a central female character, unlike most kabuki plays of the period. We have a kind of a role for a woman that's unlike previous. She's almost maybe, she's an anti-hero, I think. She's supposed to be this beautiful, seductive, powerful woman. So anyway, Darlene, please, this is visually a fascinating print, so I turn it over to you.
Well, I studied this print and I looked at it and I was trying to figure out what's going on here in terms of perspective. The light emanating toward from the center, either out or to the center, is 1 point perspective. But if you take all of that away, try to visualize the print without the rays of light, that there is no sense of 1 point perspective underneath the light. So it's an interesting thing. I was studying this. I said, I looked at the guardrails, I looked at the stairs, I looked at the figures, and I said, this does not follow perspective in terms of Western 1 point perspective or 2 point perspective. Actually, in Japan, they weren't dealing with it a lot anyway, because you're seeing space differently from one culture to the next. So the inclusion of all of the light that either emanates from the central figures way out, or you can look at it and then the light is going toward the figure, either way, gives it a dimension that is not initially part of the underlying design of the print. The colors are soft and muted, yellows and pinks, and they are they're used to tell us a story. But I looked at this and I said, well, it's an interesting design and beautifully designed, but it works on 2 different levels for me.
Thank you, Darlene. I should also mention that this print is really unusual in that it is pasted in an album. It was originally pasted in an album by whoever bought it and collected it in a sort of a folding album of how many prints, Professor Brown? Was it about 30?
It's more than 30.
20? Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, I think more than 30.
Right.
Okay.
33 triptychs. There are 33 triptychs and
39.
99 pages.
Lori is the one who discovered this
Lori knows.
treasure.
This
So
is
yeah, it's 3 separate panels, and then they were pasted into this album, and it's rare to find albums that are still together. So coming up, we'll see another part of this album, but you can see on the right edge, the right side, there's the beginning of another triptych.
Oh, yeah.
So any questions on this one?
I just want to make a comment here about the lines that are there emanating either from the figures or toward the figures. How difficult it is to try to cut each panel and make the lines match up. So when you figure the design is one thing, but those who actually executed the design, the cutters and the printers, and those who pasted the images together, really had to do a lot of careful planning in order for that whole thing to come together. So the fact that these lines don't totally match up is not surprising to me. I'm really kind of aware of how difficult it must have been, and they've done an incredible job just trying to make this thing work together the way it does. And you definitely get a swoop toward the center of the image or out. But if you strip that away, as I mentioned earlier, it really doesn't have that depth.
I have two questions.
Yes.
One, the rays of light are mostly blank paper, am I right? Reserved paper. And then at the edges, there's a little bit of pigment, but as they come towards the center, that's reserved white paper, am I right?
I would guess, I do not know. Laurie, are you able to answer that?
I think that's true. That would be my guess as well. That it's unprinted.
Yeah, so it's remarkable technically.
Remarkable what they've
Then
done with.
my second question is, which one is the lady herself? Is it the one
Is that one, the one who's hiding behind her sleeve?
hiding behind her sleeve? Okay.
Yeah.
So we're seeing most of her beautiful garments here. Okay, other questions or comments?
I have a comment. This is Jean Sowers,
Yes,
docent at the museum.
yes.
As I was looking at it and hearing Darlene's commentary on this piece, I was very much thinking of the European technique of using the vanishing point.
Uh-huh,
So the lights toward the central figure, central focal point,
right.
emanating in and out. And as if that's not enough, in the background, all those horizontal lines as well as vertical lines to create this incredible actions going on in all directions. But I just feel that this is a very effective use of that technique of vanishing point. And that to my eyes, it gives me some, not incredibly deep, but a degree of depth and three-dimensionality. And it's so incredible what they were able to do on just carving a piece of wooden block. It's just incredible.
That's right.
And I should mention, I totally agree with that. And I also love the way that the light, sometimes the ladies in waiting will come between the beams of light. Like a head will overlap the beams, like on the left.
It does.
I should mention that this print was done in 1843 by Kuniyoshi. So he definitely would have seen Western prints at this time, but it's still quite early for such sophistication, I think, in terms of perspective.
Mhm.
I missed the name of the artist. Is this also by Yoshitoshi or someone else?
It's Kuniyoshi.
Kuniyoshi. Thanks.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. Which one should I go to?
Let's do the other triptych.
This one?
Yeah, that one. Okay, so this one is also by Kuniyoshi, I believe. Yes, and it's titled "The Earth Spider Conjures Demons at Minamoto no Yorimitsu's Mansion." So Minamoto no Yorimitsu was a real character. You can see him here on the right. He's sleeping. And he lived from 948 to 1021. And he was a nobleman. I'm sure he was an actual figure, but he was also mythologized. And there are tons of stories about him. The Earth Spider and Shuten Doji are two of the stories that he's most well known for. He was a demon hunter, and he worked to rid Kyoto of demons. And so this demon on the right is the Earth Spider, and it's Chigumo in Japanese. And originally, Tsuchigumo were, it was how you referred to, it was a derogatory term for groups of people who lived in the north of Japan and were sort of, they were engaged in fighting with the Japanese, and well, they were Japanese too, but with the Japanese who lived in Kyoto and or Heian at the time. So the question is whether Minamoto no Yorimitsu actually fought this Tsuchigumo, this earth spider, or if he fought these other peoples living in the north of Japan who then became sort of turned into this monster form that we see here. Because we don't see this yokai, this monster form of the Tsuchigumo until later. The earlier references are to people. But this triptych is by Kuniyoshi, and it shows Minamoto no Yorimitsu, he's also known as Raiko, and he's dreaming, he's sick, he has a fever, but it's really because this earth spider is casting his web over him, this web of nightmares. And the earth spider is conjuring up all these yokai. And sorry, yokai means monsters in Japanese, basically. And these monsters are typical of what you would see in illustrations of the night parade of 1,000 demons. Professor Tak, is it 100 or 1,000? I think it's 1,000. And they come out at night and parade around Kyoto and terrify the citizenry. But it's interesting because here the Tsuchigumo is conjuring them up as his minions and using them to attack Raiko, who is on a mission to eradicate the earth spider. So in the forefront, we have Raiko's sort of his bodyguards, his retainers. They are referred to as the four heavenly kings. They are mythical, likely, and they are playing, these two are playing Go in the center. And on the left, one of his retainers is noticing that there's something going on. And this man, his name is Watanabe, he's going to eventually, depending on what version of the story you are reading or watching on the kabuki stage, he will probably take a tree, uproot a tree, and use it to stab this earth spider. And 1,999 skulls will pour out of the earth spider's body. So this is actually this is a ghost story. This is a monster story, but it's also a very complicated political sort of satire. And this was something that kabuki and ukiyo-e were involved in a lot, was to do this kind of hidden satire of the shogunate, the government. And so the government seized these, the original prints, and burned them. And Kuniyoshi had them made again and printed more of them. And it's an interesting story because these prints had to be vetted by censors. So the subtext got past the first censors, and then there were some guys sitting around and saying, hey, that's supposed to be the shogun, isn't it? I think maybe this green guy in the upper left. But anyway, Darlene, over to you.
Oh, gosh. Well, I took a look at this carefully, and I'm trying to figure out what I think the story was, and what Sarah said is very, very appropriate. I'm looking at the color of the print. Once again, I'm looking at these from an art point of view, and I realize that there could be a castle. This is split in two parts. And there's going to be an invasion. We're very aware of that. And there's a mob that's on the outside waiting to get in, and they have spears and they have swords. And I was looking at this and I said, from an artist's point of view, if you take a look at all of the figures and the faces of these characters, they're all individual, they're all ugly, they're all angry, as a big mob would be. The color is gray. And I think when you get masses of people together and they're in a mob like this, I think they all become one gray, massive movement. On the other side of the barrier, it could be a castle. The color is different. Once again, it's blue. And we took it, I'm going to guess that the blue could be a complacent or quieting or soft kind of color. And on that side, you're going to notice a figure on the left. He's got a cup of tea. He's aware that something's happening, but he's not really sure. In the center, there are two characters playing a game, a board game in Japanese called Go, and it's not quite checkers, but they are involved and they're engrossed in the game, not totally aware of what's going to be happening, or possibly very quickly afterwards. I wonder if you could move to the panel on the very right, because I want to show the spider. Can we do that?
If you click on the print and then use your mouse wheel to zoom.
I want to show the spider actually getting, yeah, there you go. There's one man who is snoozing. He's actually sleeping. And here comes a spider with a big garment or net. And he's about ready to put this over the one figure who's probably not even aware of what's going on here. And I looked through all of the faces, and if you can see a close-up of them, you'll know what I'm talking about. In order to design a mob scene and to recognize that each of them is an individual, and it probably has a name and a face and a character, and what they've shown here, what the artist has shown here, is completely amazing. The skill, first of all, to designing, but also the carving and the printing.
The Edo period was a time when these types of monsters were incredibly popular. And they, so many ukiyo-e artists carved so many different styles, and each one has their own name of these types of monsters.
But when you see a mob, this is what to me a mob looks like. It would be a group of very angry people. Their faces become ugly. They're intent on one thing and they are going to go do it. And this is chaos is what we see here in this print. And visually, it really carries the idea across.
So I'm going to stop sharing and ask Brittany. Well, first, are there other comments or questions about that print?
I have one question.
Yes, go.
So the last piece we saw is a triptych. So my question is, was it done on 3 separate pieces of wood blocks, or was it one and divided into 3 parts?
Lori, would you like to answer that question?
3 separate wood blocks.
Okay.
And probably printed on 3 separate days, which sometimes accounts for them not always matching up perfectly. Sometimes they don't match up the panels perfectly because they've been trimmed, but other times it's just that they're executed on at different times, different blocks, and they just didn't quite match up perfectly. Did I answer that right?
Yes, and of course, we also have to remember there's a block for each color. So it's not just 3 different blocks, it's 3 different sets of blocks.
Right.
Yeah.
For printing.
Like 12 different blocks for each color. And so there could have been like 36 pieces of wood blocks involved.
Could be,
Right?
could be.
That's
That's
actually
something-
interesting because I was thinking about the same thing, but the signature, I'm assuming it's the artist's signature, was actually in two places, not in three, not each of them. So I kind of was thinking that maybe
Go
that's
back.
one open side is so the middle one doesn't have the signature, right?
I think it would have been trimmed off because I think all of them would have
okay.
had, yeah, because
Okay,
see,
that would
to
make
fit these prints into the album, the album is smaller than the prints. So whoever bought these prints had to trim the edges off. And I think, and Laurie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think usually triptychs, they always have the sets of chalk marks on each one.
They may sometimes be missing because I'm not seeing a lot of evidence of significant enough
Okay.
trimming to cause this entire signature to vanish.
Okay,
If you look at the edges of this one, it matches up pretty well.
yeah,
So I think it's possible. Usually they will put the signature on each of the triptych panels, but I think it's altogether possible that maybe in the center panel, they just chose not to put it because it would have interrupted the
Yeah.
composition. Because if you look at that composition, there's no real good place to put it in that center panel.
Yeah, it would have been definitely disruptive.
Yeah.
Are those signatures carved in or written in?
They're carved in.
Carved.
They're carved in.
They're
yeah,
print-
everything you see is carved.
I see. Thank you.
everything's printed.
Could I ask what the date for this print is? Perhaps I missed.
This one's 1843. I'm sorry, I haven't been
Okay.
consistently, yeah.
I'm sort of curious about the comments. The word mob brought this to me particularly, but I mean, during the 1830s, particularly the late 1830s, there was a series of extremely severe famines in Japan, which resulted in an increase in rural uprisings, Hyakusho Iki and other kinds of peasant uprisings, basically because they were faced with the choice of doing that or starving to death. And I have essentially no evidence here other than your observation that the term tsuchigumo is used somewhat derogatively for people in rural areas. But to me, the sort of undifferentiated massing outside the house of some samurai seems to me like it would be somewhat suggestive that perhaps there is some sort of indirect comment here on the prevalence of rural uprisings. You know, that if we're talking about satirical potential, maybe that's there. I mean, you can't prove these things definitively, but it seems like it's certainly a possible interpretation.
I think so, especially with the way that if these were the peasants, they're portrayed as monsters. Because I think people who lived in the city really were terrified of anybody who lived outside it.
And also compositionally speaking, that strong diagonal line in the middle of the work works so effectively depicting two different extreme worlds.
Yeah.
Just a masterpiece.
So our time has ended. So I'd like to ask Brittany to say just a brief sentence about the print room's availability for teaching and students and others.
Yes, thank you, Claudia, for organizing this. This has been wonderful. And thank you, Darlene, for sharing all of these insights. It's wonderful to see your face and to hear from you. I put the information in the chat with my phone number and email address, but you can also always reach out to the ASU Art Museum. We are open to the public right now. You'll just have to make an appointment. So I'm happy to arrange a print viewing for anyone who is interested.
And most of the woodblock prints that the Art Museum has are online on the ASU Digital Repository. So if you want to look to see what they have, there's Japanese prints up until 1985 or later, and going back to, I believe, 1750 or something like that. So I don't think these latest ones are online.
No,
These
the
ones
most-
that have been donated. Yeah.
The 14 prints that Darlene donated to ASU have not been put on the digital repository, but they are available, right, Courtney, in the print study room, and they are all from the Yoshitoshi 100 Ghosts series. If you're interested, I can, just write to me and I can send you images of all of them. Okay.
Very large images.
They are gorgeous images, professionally done. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Darlene. And thank you, Professor Tak, Professor O. This is great. Would you like to do it again sometime?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
We'll get
Okay.
Professor Tuck to take my place.
Okay.
No,
He knows all about this literature.
It'd be so fun to have like a class on this, a mini class, so that you really could understand. I mean, it's
Oh.
so fabulous.
Maybe we should do a series. That's a good idea.
I'd
That
love
would be
it.
fabulous.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
far from an expert on art history, but I'd be happy to contribute however I
Oh, but sometimes we need people with outside expertise to tell us
Yeah.
more about the historical or economic or political perspectives, because it's certainly a part of the subject matter. I think that's what made today's program very helpful. And I want to thank Professor Brown and Sarah Gossett and Darlene Goto, particularly for each of their perspectives on things. And for you, Professor Tuck, for jumping in and adding to that discussion.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let me close by saying that this is one thing we can do by Zoom. We can all look at the same little detail in the same image at the same time and
Yeah.
discuss it like this. So
And there's a whole album of prints that we've barely looked at. So
that's right.
there's room for more of these.
The 33 prints. Okay, we will cook up another. Okay, all right. I'll close the formal part of this. If anyone wants to stay informally for a moment, that's fine too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I know Sarah has a
Thank you
class.
very much.
Everybody has
Lovely to
classes.
see everyone.
Thank
Darlene.
you.
Darlene's gone. Darlene,
Yes.
Oh, she's here.
I've been trying to get a hold of you.
Oh,
Would you look in chat and call me, please?
Oh,
well, either that or I'll call you. I don't do, chat is something I may not do, but I can talk to you on the phone.
Okay, call me, please.
Okay.
Darlene,
Yes,
Darlene, is your email still the same?
yes, it is. It is.
So that DAR
Or 222
222.
at cox.net.
Great.
Darlene, your analysis from an artist's point of view was just overwhelmingly good. It was
Wasn't it? It was
so
I
insightful.
totally agree.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. You're being very kind. I'm just responding from an art background, and Sarah is the one who knows all about the history, and I know nothing about the history.
Yeah, Sarah provided such a wonderful art history perspective, but you also contributed such an insightful aspects from an artist's perspective. So two together really complemented each other.
And I mean, all of it.
Okay.
That's what made it so special. You
Yes.
had
It
all
was,
the
it was
different.
very interdisciplinary.
Yes,
great.
very, very good. So
So
yeah, I'd
excited.
love to see this continuing as a series.
Yeah, I loved
okay, we'll
it.
try.
Okay, big hug.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, this was really good.
You guys were wonderful.
I was so nervous at the
You were
beginning.
wonderful.
Thank you. That was
Darlene,
kind
you were amazing.
of, what?
I feel like it sounds like you've been doing this your whole life. You were
No,
amazing.
I was nervous doing it, but I'm
You
just.
didn't sound nervous at
I'm
all.
winging it. Listen, I'm winging it.
Well, it was wonderful.
It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like you have it all planned out.
I like that. Okay. All right. Well, we'll figure out. It seems like we're asked to do it again. So
And Professor Brown, thank you for the images. I forgot
Oh.
to thank you.
oh,
Thank you for being the image person.
You know,
Yeah.
I think it's good to have a third person to do
I
that.
think it is too, because I'm looking
Because-
at my notes and
Yeah, yeah, that way you don't have to think about it. If you want a certain thing, you can tell me, go here, go there.
Mhm,
Because I just sort of,
thank you.
it was fun. I
If it
really,
had just
enjoyed-
been me, it would have been a disaster because I didn't have them downloaded.
oh, no. Okay, I'm gonna stop